We continue our conversation now on fracking in the entire area, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, with Denton Cinquegrana, who is the chief oil analyst at the Oil Price Information Service, OPIS. We'll just call it that from now on. Denton, thanks for being here. In the first segment, you had two people who were adamantly against fracking, and they talked mostly about the risk, but they also said that the economic impact of fracking isn't as positive as you would believe. What do you believe?
Well, I do think there has been a benefit in gasoline prices, home heating oil prices this winter.
Let's start with gasoline prices.
Sure, gasoline prices.
I don't think people would see immediately how fracking for natural gas would help oil prices.
Well, the local fracking that you're seeing in Pennsylvania and New York, not necessarily New Jersey, but on the East Coast, is mostly for natural gas. The fracking that brings oil out of the ground is seen in North Dakota. For example, the Bakken fields in North Dakota, they've been there for we've known about them for over 50 years. The only thing is we've only recently had the technology to be able to extract that oil. West Texas has made a huge comeback. Now, prices dropping the way they have since the summer has hurt some of those producers, but in the grand scheme of things, it's been a benefit to a lot of the driving public here in the United States.
Because it brought down gas prices.
And brought down oil prices.
The overall benefit is to the oil and gas companies, though, right?
Well, I would argue that the consumers has seen what has essentially been amount to a tax break in the fact that gasoline prices are $1 below where we were a year ago. Gasoline demand has not necessarily gone up as much as you might expect with cheaper gasoline prices. And that's because CAFE standards have gotten very tough, and they're only going to get tougher in the long run.
Now let's stay in this area for a second, in the states that we've been talking about. Many of the politicians look at the natural gas fracking and say, whoa, what a boon to the state. It's going to bring in a lot of tax revenue. Right. And some of the individual areas say, wow, what a boon to this area. It's going to bring in a lot of money in jobs, and it's going to create jobs. But that comes and goes quickly, doesn't it? It
does, and like anything else, and I think the previous guest says there's boom and bust cycles. What we're seeing now is, for example, everyone's pointing to the rig count dropping. That's the amount of rigs that are drilling for oil. And again, I'm going to stick to oil, but in West Texas, in North Dakota, even Colorado and Wyoming, places like that. So, but what's happened is the technology, the techniques, et cetera, have gotten so much better that a lot of those rigs that are coming offline, they produce maybe 15 barrels a day, and that's not 15,000, that's 15 barrels a day. So
yeah, but you extrapolate that. I mean, there's a million, I heard. There's a million, at least a million fracking sites around the country.
Yeah, there's a lot. And again, the techniques and so the per barrel cost has certainly come in. When the price of oil was dropping that we saw late last year, you had a lot of talk of, well, $80 is break even, $70 is break even. That might have been the case maybe 2-3 years ago, but they've gotten so much better at what they do that their break even costs have come in significantly.
So the entire argument comes risk cost, risk benefit. That's the entire argument for or against fracking. And people that are for fracking say the economic benefit is so great, you have to do this and the risk is minimal. And the people on the other side say, wait a second, the risk is great. And it's not worth what we're doing to threaten our children and our well-being. Where do you come down on this?
Well, as a journalist by trade, I have to be objective, and the truth probably lies somewhere between. Obviously, we're paying less prices for gasoline. We're paying lower prices for home heating oil. I use natural gas in my home. My natural gas prices have been lower. So there's that benefit. But again, at the same time, I want to breathe clean air. I want clean water to drink and things like that. So. But
you're willing to take this risk at this point?
Well, knowing that there's not much happening, it all comes down to the not my backyard argument. The oil that's coming through to refineries, a lot of it comes still via ship. The Bayway refinery in Linden, for example, they run a lot of Brent crude, but they're also starting to bring Bakken crude by rail through by train, and there are some risks associated with that. But
what about the risk to the water supply? And that's what everybody seems to talk about. I know there's this climate change thing too, but that's with a lot of different industries. So let's just stay with the water supply, because when they do this hydraulic fracturing, that they necessarily have to send down a lot of bad chemicals into the water.
Right.
And you would acknowledge they are toxic chemicals.
That is certainly scary.
And I guess the people that are for fracking say, well, there haven't been as many cases as you would think there should be, considering this, and we've gotten so much better at it. I guess the strongest argument I've heard against fracking is there's no long-term studies. We don't know what the long-term risk is.
Yeah.
Is that the number one risk?
I think so. And again, like you said, we're pretty much in the infancy still of this industry that's really developed in the last 4 or 5 years.
What you said is scary, a little bit scary for people.
Yeah, it is. And again, if that is the case where it's poisoning water, yeah, we've got to take a step back and say, hey, is this the right thing we should be doing right now?
But what if we don't know if it's poisoning water? That's what I'm talking about with the long-term risk. Shouldn't that be studied before we start doing this, before we have 1 million fracking holes around the country? And to tell you the truth, I'm not really coming down on either side.
Right.
That is of all the arguments I heard, I thought that was the strongest one.
It is. And again, yeah, there's got to be long-term studies, obviously, feasibility studies, and these companies have to know what they're doing. But again, I'll stress that their techniques, the ways they've done this, the technologies have gotten better. Hopefully that minimizes the risks.
Denton Cinquegrana, the chief oil analyst for the Oil Price Information Service, also known as OPIS, and please come back. We'll be talking about this a lot. When we come back on another thing. Polar bears love this weather, but what happens with the animals who came from the Serengeti? Dawn visits the zoo to find out how they keep all the animals happy when winter comes to town.